Racism, unfortunately, is something that has been ingrained in the American culture. And whether you have been a victim or a perpetrator, if you've been in this country, you have experienced racism. This is the story of the first time that I experienced racism in my life. Let's reminisce. So, first through fifth grade, I was blessed and fortunate enough to attend a private school. Now, private school has a lot of benefits and a lot of perks. But for someone who is African American or Black, there are some underlying things that you pick up on when you attend private school. I was the only Black child in my class for all of first grade and the majority of second grade. I did have a young Black girl who joined our class in second grade during the second half, but that's another story for another time. So, in second grade, beginning of the year, we're studying history, and I loved history. I loved everything about history. It was just very intriguing to me to learn about the forefathers, to learn about historical heroes, where they came from, and how they became the men and women that they would become to be known as leaders in this country and other countries. But I absorbed and took in everything I could about history. I just loved that subject and loved any time we had a history lesson. So on this one particular day, we're taking a history test. And being that I loved history, teacher gives us the test. It's over, I believe, like the first 5 to 10 people in our history books, and I aced right through it. I finished the test probably in 5 minutes, maybe even quicker than that. Now, the rule in second grade or in my elementary school was if you finished early, you put your head on your desk. So I did just that. With my head on my desk, I look over and I see another student who had also finished their test, and they have their history book out, and they're reading through their history book. So I said, hey, that's a great idea. I'd much rather be reading my history book than just sitting here with my head on my desk. So I took my history book, it was under my seat at the time, and I started going through to learn about historical figures who I hadn't heard about yet. And I had a very fond interest or a desire in wanting to find Black historical figures. So I'm going through the book and I'm looking, I'm searching. And of course, come across Dr. Martin Luther King, came across Dr. George Washington Carver, and I had already read about those two in my own spare time. We hadn't got to those lessons yet, but I'd already read about them. So I'm searching for someone new. And I come across Booker T. Washington. I never heard of him. So I'm excited. Mr. Washington was at the end of the book, probably the second to last person. So I'm reading the book and I'm just enthralled and learn about Booker T. Washington. Well, my teacher walks by and she sees me with my book out. And she says, James, what are you doing? And I told her, honestly, I'm reading the history book. And she said, have you turned in your test? I said, yes, ma'am. Turned in my test already. So she went up front and she took my test. She looks at my test. She looks back at me. She looks over at the test. And she looks back at me again. And then she takes her pen and she draws a big fat 0 on the test. Now that hurt me to my core because up to this point in my life, I have only made A's, not even a B. She came and she accused me of cheating. She said that while taking the test, I was using the book to get the answers. So she told me that I would have to take the test again during recess, so that I would lose my recess and I would have to take the test with her in the class, just her, while she was watching me. Now, even though I was in second grade, instinctually I already knew that it would be no point in saying that this other student had their history book out, or trying to debate or argue or say that I was reading about a character who wasn't even on the test or anything. I just knew that there was nothing that I could do to change my fate that had been assigned to me. So on that day, I lost my recess, took the test again. Of course, I aced it because I loved history. I knew everything. Not to brag, but on that particular test, I was prepared, I was ready, I aced it. And I just knew, and it's something that stuck with me the rest of my life, that this was not something that you were gonna catch me slipping up again. I knew that I was going to be looked at with a much finer lens, with much more detail. I was going to be examined closer, and I knew that things weren't going to be fair. And I knew that I had to do and perform better than people who were in the same class as me, just to stand out, or just to be known, or to be acknowledged. Unfortunately, I have experienced other racist acts and racist situations in my 38, almost 39 years. But those are other stories for another time. Well, hey, I thank you guys for listening today, and I look forward to sharing more of my life with you. Peace, and God bless.